So people's behavior is generally affected by the environment, external. So external environmental factors, for example, in the ecological systems theory that Bronfenbrenner Uri spoke about, it helps us to appreciate that our internal state, our internal balance can be affected or influenced by states outside of us. So you can have the community in which you live can affect the way you view yourself, the way you view other persons. You can also look at, for example, the school you attend, the school you go to, or the school that you went to. That can also affect how you view other individuals, how you view yourself, how you view your readiness to approach the world of work. And then the family in which you came from, or that the family that you're currently in, or your relatives, that could also affect your mindset, affect your esteem of yourself, your self-worth. So externally there can be a number of things, and also too we have social media that's external to an individual that could affect how they internalize themselves, how they look at the world, how they look at their abilities, their accomplishments, how they look at, for example, how they present themselves to others. So externally we agree can affect significantly uh, how we view ourselves. Of course, we're not saying that the environmental factors outside the individual is the only means whereby a person can be affected. For example, we know that internal, for example, a person may have a mental health disorder and that can affect how they view themselves. It can thwart or bend their view of reality. So that internal, the internal states could be affected by a mental disorder. Also, there can be internalizing ideas based on other physical challenges a person may have. So let's say, for example, a person may be diabetic and it can affect from time to time their energy levels, so they may at time be a little more moody or a little more irritable. In some situations, not all situations, of persons who have diabetes mean that they will present that way, but sometimes it can happen. A person who, for example, has anemic condition, anemia, that can affect their energy levels, so that could affect their moods. It could affect the how much they're able to do or to accomplish, and sometimes that can affect their mental states. They may be comparing themselves to others and so forth, and that could really contribute to some unbalanced views uh, when it comes to their thinking. Today we want to talk about classroom management and how creating an atmosphere in the classroom. So we're talking about an external atmosphere in the classroom, how a positive atmosphere can actually influence behaviors. I'm Allick Delancy, a psychologist, and today we will be talking about classroom management and how we can, especially as educators, help to motivate our students to learn as well as to assist them to regulate their behaviors based on the positive atmosphere that we create. So keep in mind that in the classroom, as an educator, you must create a feeling of caring. You must have that caring persona, project that feeling that you really care about your students. And it is not that you're just pretending that you care about your students, because whatever subject you're teaching, let's say for example you're a primary school teacher, you no doubt you're teaching maybe several different subject matter. And if you are a secondary school teacher, well then you are teaching possibly in a specific area. So it might be mathematics, geography, social studies, history. And you believe that your subject can influence decisions that the students will make in the future. Your subject, if you are a secondary school teacher, for example, or even if you are a university lecturer or professor, what you're teaching the students, you want it to have an impact on their career path, who they are, who they turn out to be, as the case may be. So you want to create that kind of atmosphere that says learning is important, learning is fun, because sometimes persons think that when you're in the classroom, you have to be uh, hard and harsh and serious. Of course, there is time for seriousness, but learning takes place when, and it takes place better, I'll say, when the environment that is created is an environment that is fun, is gamified. So create that environment that you want to be there. You care about the students. You have their best interests at heart. Also, teach with enthusiasm. When you're in the classroom, of course, sometimes we have bad days. We come to the classroom and we're not feeling the best. Sometimes we may be a little tired. Maybe there's a lot of things going on in our personal life. Maybe domestically, we have challenges with maybe our family members, maybe a challenge a husband, or challenge with a wife, maybe challenge with children, or maybe just the day-to-day living can be very challenging, causing some stress levels to rise, maybe the bills to pay, or sometimes even the subject that you're teaching, you may start questioning whether or not you're qualified to teach a subject, because at one time when you left school, you were prepared, but maybe some years have passed and you probably didn't keep up with the technology. And now you're placed in a position where you're feeling that you're not prepared to teach your subject matter. Nonetheless, there are a number of books out there. There are YouTube, for example. You can Google stuff. You can do a lot of self-study that can help you to be prepared. So the subject that you're teaching, the subject matter, you might know it, but because of the advancement in technology or different ways of doing things, research probably has shown different answers to the ones that you probably knew. You might feel some level of inadequacy, but of course, do your research, and it's readily available. Long ago, we had to leave and go to a library. Now, of course, if you have to go to a library, you have to go to a library. It's a good place to learn. There's a lot of books and articles and so forth. But there's a lot of things online, a lot of videos, as well as you can talk to other persons to kind of get a sense of whether or not your skill set, your knowledge base is where it should be at. So talk to maybe a mentor or someone that you trust their judgment, or you look up to them because of being in that particular education field. Maybe they teach in the specific areas that you are teaching in, or probably they have been teaching for a little while longer than you, and you trust their judgment. So you can talk with them so that when you teach with a level of sincerity and enthusiasm, and you're not holding back in any way. So that too will create a classroom environment or atmosphere that is positive. When you're excited about what you're teaching, you're enthusiastic and you're sincere. Also too, you want to project that on other students, and you want to be conscious of actually projecting that level of excitement to learn onto other students, because what can happen is that if we are thinking overly about what we see, how we present ourselves, and that is causing us some level of stress, or causing us to hold back. Sometimes what can actually motivate students to learn in this positive classroom environment is not necessarily what we may think. We may present ourselves to our classroom, our students, and the mere fact that we are energetic and we happy to be there, and we seem to have a good grasp of our subject matter, they can buy into that, especially if we're using a lot of illustrations and stories and examples. They're buying into that. So they are willing to learn. And in most instances, once they're in your classroom, you as a teacher, you may actually know quite a bit more on the subject matter than the student, especially if like probably most students, they may not have read up on the information before, check the textbook, or they may not have been following the curriculum to see exactly what they were supposed to be learning in this class or in your class. So you are the expert. Of course, you're not taking the approach that you know everything in the classroom and there's nothing that you can learn more, even from your students. But you want to project on the students that level of excitement and willingness to even learn. You, as the educator, you have to help them to appreciate that even you too, and you could even say to them, you too are excited when you learn about a new material in this particular field or in this particular area. So you want to create that or establish that positive classroom environment. And a key way or key ways to do that, you want to show that caring persona, you want to demonstrate it. You want to show sincerity and enthusiasm. You want to be involved in the subject that you're teaching. It must be like you become an actor. You become someone who dramatizes the subject. The students must look at you and say, "Wow, Miss is really into that. So is really into to that subject that they're teaching." And even though that student may not necessarily love that particular subject, because of how you present yourself, that student can buy into, maybe I should try. Maybe I should really put my best foot forward and try to do a little better, or try to do my best in this subject. And of course, you want to transfer that positivity to them. Of course, be mindful as teachers that negativity from students are not transferred to you, because there are some situations where a student, or maybe a couple of students or a few students, may come to the class, they don't want to be there, they may be upset, they feel that they are sentenced to your class or to the school, as opposed to being sent, or as opposed to coming to learn. And because of that, they may be very irritable, very moody. They don't see the need for your class, because maybe the career path that they want to go into, it may, your subject matter may have little to nothing to do with what they want to do in the future. So they're coming with that kind of mentality, or possibly they may be going through some challenges in their own lives. Maybe they're going through family issues as well. I know that there are some children, they may not be in the best household. Sometimes the household might be abusive, physically abusive, verbally abusive, and otherwise. And they're coming into your classroom, and they're coming with this level of stress as well, and this level of trauma. So what can happen is that when they come and they sit, it's not necessarily you that they're upset with, but they may sit there, or they may come late, or they may start talking during your class, entertaining themselves, doing something else. And that could really get you upset as an educator, as a teacher. And that could be transferred to you. So now you start becoming irritable, you be anxious, you upset, you frustrated, you annoyed, and you may even lash out at them. You may probably scream at the students, you may probably disrupt your class, because there are some who are doing the work, paying attention to you, but you now become overly entangled with the other students who are not paying attention, or probably um, showing some level of disrespect in your class, and you are busy aggressively treating with that situation, putting all your classroom management strategies and techniques to the side, and now just becoming very combative. And because of that, you can now change the tone, the atmosphere in your classroom, and the atmosphere now becomes one that is negative. So you want to pay close attention to um, the fact that you want to be able to be in control of yourself first and foremost, but you also have others in the classroom that paying attention to how you treat with situations, or how you manage your time, or how you manage your class, or how you manage your emotions, and they are learning from that. So you don't want to demonstrate any kind of inappropriateness of behaviors that in the long run you will be actually and probably even inadvertently contributing to the negativity in your classroom or the disruption in your classroom. So pay close attention to that, and do your very best to try to reach as much, if not all, your students in your classroom with your subject matter. And in so doing, you'll be creating or establishing a positive classroom atmosphere. So I hope that you found this content interesting, informative, and bringing some value to you. If so, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Sometimes people do not feel like they're being heard, and because of not feeling like they're being heard, they either raise their voices louder or they probably act out with a behavior, because acting out, it is a means of communicating. So a person might act out by shouting or screaming at another individual because they feel like they're not being heard. Or in some situations, a person may actually try to escape or avoid a situation because their perception is that if I try to engage this other individual or group of individuals in a conversation or some kind of dialogue, it just wouldn't make sense. So before all of that, just escape, just leave the immediate environment. And if I can't leave the immediate environment physically, then I'll just escape mentally. So I will go somewhere, mentally visualize it in my head, and I may be in the environment with the other individuals that I really can't stand, but mentally I just not here. So I am protecting myself mentally. So there are a number of ways in which a person, when they feel like they're not being heard, they can act. Now, we are continuing the discussion on classroom management and creating a positive classroom environment for our students and for our teachers as well. And today we want to talk about validating the feelings of students. We do have a number of students, and it's in some situations quite alarming, where we have a number of students who are experiencing some kind of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, maybe economic abuse, or physical abuse, or verbal, or any of those. So our students are actually experiencing quite a bit, and communicating with them is sometimes a bit of a challenge, because our students may spend so much time, for example, on social media, something that could actually distract them or something that they feel more connected with, as opposed to talking about their feelings, that when we are in their presence and we want them to tell us what's going on, sometimes they really don't, because they figure or they perceive, and many times erroneous, sometimes they're actually accurate, but many times erroneously they perceive that as adults we do not understand what they're going through, and therefore it makes no sense even trying to communicate with us as to how they're feeling, because we are just going to judge them negatively. And some students, if they have been placed in a situation where they actually have been judged negatively in the past, then they are more likely not to engage that same individual, or sadly other individuals who may actually have their best interests at heart. They no longer try to engage those individuals in conversations, and because of that may suffer in silence, or may gravitate to a group that do not have their best interests at heart, a group that may actually suggest ways of behaving or teach that young individual, that student, way of behaving to be heard. And it many a times it's a maladaptive way of being heard. So you find that that child may act out, may involve in aggression, violence, fighting, cursing, threatening other individuals. And in some situations, they actually um, benefit, because when they engage in some kind of confrontation, maybe the other individual backs down or backs off, and because of that, they actually get what they want. So it becomes a mechanism that they use in the future, because they learn how to behave when they want something. So I would strongly recommend, as educators, teachers, lecturers, professors, facilitators, those who are working in the field of education, even administrators in the field of education, because many times a child may engage in a particular behavior and they are sent to the principal office or sent to the dean's office or the form teacher's office. And if the form teacher, dean or principal or vice principal or head teacher doesn't treat with the situation in a mature way, it can actually escalate it. It could become very volatile. And I have seen situations where administrators and students are fist fighting it out. That, I mean, when it reaches to that degree, then it has already reached too far. So a good method or good strategy, less intensive strategy if you want to call it that, is to validate the student's feeling. Now, you're not saying, well, I understand what you mean, I understand what you're feeling to a student, because many times we may actually not understand what the student is feeling in its entirety. We may have an idea because we may have felt that way before based on a situation we were in. But as our children are experiencing so many different challenges or concerns in their lives, it may be that we have never really felt or experienced what they're going through. So it may be advantageous to say to a child or a student or a teenager, well, I really don't understand what you're going through. Could you explain it to me, please? So you can say something like that. Or maybe you can say something like, I know some people who are experiencing what you are just describing to me. They say they feel this particular way, and you probably name the particular way that you will have learned or heard persons mention. And you follow up that by saying to the child, is it that that's how you feel? If that's how you feel, then I could well imagine how it's contributing to dot 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 dot, and you probably say something else. So you want to be able to make that human connection. Carl Rogers talk about the human connection with students. It is not that you as the teacher or the administrator is up here and the children or the teenager is down here. You want to make that connection with that human being, because that is what our students are. They're human beings and they have feelings, they have thoughts, they have emotions, they reason, right? And you want to be able to make that connection with them. So validate how they're feeling. Sometimes you may have to do a post-situational follow-up on a child. So take for example, you may have had to engage in some kind of strategy in the classroom that will have caused the child to separate from the rest. So maybe you say to that child, okay, there's a timeout corner that you have. You don't want to have the timeout corner too far away from the other students that, or far away from you, that that child can't hear what is going on in the class while you're teaching. You want to have it in a area where they can still hear and still pay attention. But maybe you had to separate them from the rest of the group. After you do a post-situational follow-up, so you call that student, maybe it's some time after the class has ended, or probably could be the following day. You will know the situation, you can choose. And you say to that child, or that student, or that teenager, that preteen, I noticed that, let's say it's the same day, I noticed that earlier in the class you had some real challenges focusing. Is it that the subject matter was too difficult? Because if it was difficult, then I could understand why you will have challenges focusing. You can probably ask a question or say something like that. Make a comment. And then you can help the child to appreciate in the future if it is that you're having challenges focusing, paying attention, or probably you have challenges in comprehending what is being taught. You can raise your hands, you can write on a piece of paper and give to me and say, Miss or Sir, I don't understand what's going on. Or if you just need a break, because sometimes that's what our students may need. They may just need a time for us to stop the class, give them a breather, probably do something novel with them, maybe play a game or ask a question or just give a easy quiz or just do a recap or recall of what we just did. So we give them a little time to mentally breathe. Maybe that's what is needed. So you can say to the student, I could now understand that, so or I feel that I understand what was going on. You probably felt as though all this information was just coming at you all at once and you could not deal with it. Is that how you felt? Because if that's how you felt, then I could probably understand what you're experiencing or what you have experienced as to why you felt you needed to act out in the class the way you did. Because if I was going through that situation where a lot of information was coming at me all at once, um, I probably may feel some stress. Is that what you were feeling? You felt stressed, you felt annoyed, you felt frustrated. So this is how you're talking with them. And you're probably doing that sitting down in a very relaxed way, not confrontational, standing over them or pointing at them or pointing, or, right? Neither do you want to call the student any names such as foolish or stupid, or say things or make comments like you don't care about your education, that's why you were doing that, right? We don't want us to go down that route, because many times we may go down that route and we might be actually inaccurate in our assumption of the situation. So students have feelings, they have a limbic system in their brains, so they will experience emotion, they will experience sadness, they will experience frustration, they will experience joy as well. So a student who recognizes that you as a teacher was willing to come to them and have a dialogue, or to come to them and have a conversation, there's a level of happiness they will feel. There's a sense that they can trust you because you have their best interests at heart, not just making certain that they follow all directions in the classroom and get all their coursework completed and finish your curriculum, but you actually have a genuine interest in them. And I'll tell you what, I have seen situations where students were willing to actually go to a teacher and talk about something that was happening in their personal life, but did not feel comfortable talking to their peers about the situation, or even felt comfortable talking to their parents about the situation. And that became possible because of the kind of positive environment, the fact that that teacher was welcoming, was warm, was willing to listen in a very non judgmental way, and to listen critically, actively, with a view to support, with a view to help. Even if that student needed to be adjusted or to be disciplined, the student is more likely to actually accept that discipline or accept that adjustment, because they will have noted that the teacher actually had their best interests at heart. The teacher is one who will sit and listen. The teacher is one who will set aside time. I've actually heard students, when they engage in inappropriate behaviors based on the connection that they will have made with a teacher, they said they felt as though they disappointed the teacher. They felt that how they act or reacted to a situation was not called for. And I've actually seen situations where students go and apologize to teachers and say that they were very sorry of how they reacted, not just in front of other students, but how they reacted in front of that teacher, because that teacher has trust in them and they felt as though they will have broken that trust in some instance. They will have actually disrespected that teacher, so they felt that guilt and that sense of remorse, and they felt they needed to say something. So as educators, as teachers, we want to be able to make that human connection with our students. We want to validate their feelings. They do have feelings. We want to recognize that they do feel pain and hurt and sadness, and we want to be able to support them, or even if we have to discipline them, we want to do it in a spirit of love and mildness, and be very kind with them, because we are actually showing them or modeling a behavior that we want them to actually demonstrate in their lives, in the classroom, and even when they get older. So we would definitely want to show them a model that they can follow that is appropriate. So if you find this content to be valuable, like, comment, and you can even share this video with someone else that you think might benefit from the information. So until then, take care.